morning, Marco Bucci. Well, afternoon, where you are?
Good. No, it's afternoon. It's 1 o'clock here in the Eastern time zone.
I always feel like I always say good morning because that's what it is here where we are usually, but it's never right for anybody else. But yeah, it's good to have you here, Marco.
Good to be here as always, guys. Thanks for having me on, and always good to chat with you, Stephen. You're the best live stream host that there is.
Oh, I don't know about all that, but I appreciate it all the same. I'll trust you. If anyone knows how to spot like any sort of like good energy, I think it's you.
So, all right, and hello everyone here. I actually don't see the YouTube interface. I'm assuming there's at least one other person here. So hello.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, Marco Bucci at Bucci Blog on most social media is a fantastic artist, a skilled art instructor, and a person that we love working with very, very, very much. He's taken some time today to walk us through some color mixing, which I know is a pretty common question for a lot of you guys out there. You get this idea of, well, I've used paint before, but how do I possibly translate any of those concepts over to the digital world? Luckily, we've got a person here who specializes in that kind of thing. There will be some parts later where we talk about buying Marco's course, but for right now, the thing that we want to do is give you guys access to Marco entirely for free. So if you guys have any questions or anything like that, please drop them in the chat here. Get all the good stuff in there. He doesn't necessarily want to tell you just, like, how do I learn to draw? But he'll do it. He'll do it.
Yeah. I will take any questions. Nothing is off limits. If you have a question about pinball, you get ushered to the top of the line.
It's true. Yeah, if you guys aren't aware, Marco Bucci is a fantastic pinball wizard who's building his own freaking pinball machine. You can follow a lot of that over on your
There's the madness.
Twitter.
There's the madness in the back.
Oh, goodness.
Yep. Okay.
I'm not sure exactly what the camera looks like, the face cam looks like for the people out there on YouTube right now. It's a little crunchy on my end.
Oh.
So I like the idea of it looking like security footage, kind of, for inside your house.
Sorry about that.
Oh, no, you're good.
As long as my screen is clear, I guess.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna transition over to that. You guys, again, put those questions in the chat. This is your time. You get free knowledge from a fantastic artist. Okay. All right. Art screen time.
Oh, nice. All right.
Yeah.
All right.
What are you going to show us today, Marco Bucci?
Yeah. Well, we've titled the live stream "Mixing Color." Now, obviously, in digital, you don't mix color; you choose color. But I would term it the same thing. You are mixing colors on your canvas. Usually, when you paint digitally, the difference being with traditional is obviously you're mixing colors right in front of you, like physically on a palette, and you see those colors and pigments blend. With digital, the main drawback with digital, for all its awesomeness, that one of the drawbacks with digital is I think it's harder to learn about mixing color because you don't get that physical experience of pigments mixing. So I guess what I want to talk to you here, and I've got 2 images on screen that I'll be working with. I want to kind of paint sort of color key / sort of thumbnail quick versions of both of these and talk about how the color strategies are similar, but also using different palettes. These 2 images obviously use pretty different palettes. Like this one has a lot, the mermaid one has a lot of heavy temperature contrast. You get like very warm characters versus a very cold, cooler color background. Whereas this one here, which is a concept piece I did for the Nutcracker film several years ago, was this one is more of a toned down, not monochrome, but kind of a lower key palette where most of it is analogous, meaning most of the colors exist side by side. When I say analogous colors, it means like the colors are side by side, but still some of the sunlight coming through, you can see like the sunbeam there, those colors break away from that and still have a lot of color temperature contrast. Okay, when I say color temperature, the main thing that we are thinking about is the idea of warm versus cool. Now, and Stephen, interrupt me with any questions, please. Just chime in.
For sure. Yeah, I'm getting together for the chat right now.
Cool. Everyone here, just feel free to blast questions at any time, and Stephen will interrupt me. It's all good. Essentially, I want to give you some quick strategies of manipulating color temperatures here on the color wheel, and then we'll get right into painting. One of my courses, the Color Survival Guide, goes more in depth into this, but I want to give you guys a quick primer, then we'll use it, okay? So in general, and this is something I'm sure we're all taught if you ever took grade school art, it's a very, very basic concept. This side of the color wheel is generally the warm side, right? I remember I was like 5th grade or 4th grade art class. So like, your warm colors, red, yellow, orange, like those are your warm colors. And then your cold colors are on this side, which is, opposite of the color wheel, opposite side. Blues, purples, cyan colors, some greens, etc. And that is true. It is a very basic starting point, but it is true that those are your general camps of color. Now, knowing that is really not going to get you anywhere, because you have to know, the reason is because you need to know how to move. So if I go back to my color wheel, if I have a warm color and a cool color, how do you move there? Like which colors around the color wheel do you choose to move from warm to cool in a way that gives you color harmony? Now, what is color harmony? The way I define color harmony is giving the viewer a clear path that colors take to move from warm to cool. Okay, let's talk about strategies about that. And I should probably just start painting because I don't want to run out of time. Not that we're stuck to a time limit.
Marco.
So, okay, sure. Okay, I'll do a quick. Okay, so basically, here's what you want to think about. First, you have to define where your warms and cools exist. So, in this painting here, the mermaid one, because it's pretty obvious, the warm colors are in this range here. I can sample them for you here. Let me just enlarge the color picker, and as I sample Ariel here, look at the colors. They're, what's that, a reddish orange. They're into the yellows. The fish, Flounder is his name. He's in the oranges, like very bright oranges and yellows. So, our warm colors were in here on the color picker, which translates to, this range, maybe even the Flounder was yellow, right? So this general range of the color wheel, which is the stereotypical warm colors in the color wheel. Now, also remember, this color wheel that I'm showing you on screen here uses different levels of saturation, right? Like if I pick this, if I chose this color here, look where it is on the color picker. It's closer to the gray. Whereas if I chose this color, this versus this, it's getting more saturated, right? The color is getting more saturated. So this color wheel is showing you different levels of saturation, which is one of the key concepts. Now, the idea with saturation is, and this is where I'll make a quick little color chart. Let me just start a new canvas here. Let me talk about saturation because this will play in heavily in our discussion. Let's say we have a little canvas here. Yeah, these are the prerequisites. We'll get right into painting in just a few minutes. Let's say we had, let's pick something from the painting. Let's say this color here, which is in the painting. It's all over, it's Ariel's skin tone and even some on the Flounder, the fish there. We have that color. Now, if we then put a gray version of that over on this side, this represents a movement of temperature from warm to cool. We go from W here for warm and C here for cool, and we have to move from one to the other. To fill in that space, simply, it's just changes in saturation. So this same orange color, whatever color this is, I guess it's orange, right? Color names are actually kind of useless because a painter generally learns to think about color temperature, warm and cool, not orange, blue, red. But I guess this is orange. It's funny, I get this wrong all the time. My 5-year-old daughter makes fun of me because I'll call something purple and she's like, "It's pink, Daddy,"
So do you think that that's a product of the idea of how you think of colors? Because there's also that idea that some people have more cones in their eyes, and so they perceive like a wider fidelity of colors.
That's an interesting, but I never actually thought of that. I've never done a cone count in my own eyes. Maybe you can let me know where I can get this done, Stephen. I've never done a cone count, but I don't
reach out to the people.
The thing, yeah, reach out, see what everyone's cone count is. All I do is I just compare one color versus another. One of the truisms of color is a single color, it means nothing in a painting because you can't tell if a single color is warm or cool. Like if I just cropped in and showed you like this, Is that color warm or cool? That's an impossible question to answer. You need a broader spectrum of comparison. In this particular chart, this chart indeed goes from warm to cool because it's getting grayer. Now, why does gray in this particular chart, why does gray get cool? Well, because it's all about that path. Remember I said earlier, color harmony is about the path that you were showing the viewer around the color wheel. Well, in our chart here, where did I start? Somewhere around here. This was my first color. Yeah. And then I ended off at pure gray. I'll just get it. I ended off at pure gray. The path I'm showing the viewer goes like this, right? And I'm saying it's getting cooler. The reason it's getting cooler is because if you simply extended that path a little bit, it's taking you into the actual, the blues. It's taking you toward the blues. That means that this path is getting cooler because if I start picking colors along this path, I am progressively getting cooler. Now, this gray idea is also how you warm up a blue, which is a counterintuitive sort of thing that people struggle with. A blue, how do you get a warmer blue? Well, it's the same thing. If I started, all I have to do, if I just color shifted this palette to like this, now the chart goes from cool to warm for the same reason. I start, this chart now starts about there, and it goes this way, it ends here. Well, that path, as we pick colors along that path, and imagine you're extending that path, well, where do we end up? We end up in the warms. So the most powerful concept that there is with color theory and color practice is understanding gray. That's a good primer now to get into painting. And then, of course, I'll expand on concepts as we go, because there are other paths as well. In my Color Survival Guide course, I talk about 4 different paths. But the gray one is honestly the most, probably the least understood. Being a teacher now for like 13 years, I'm constantly critiquing this part about color in people's work, because often what people do is they will have a warm color and they'll have a cool color, but they'll just kind of like jump from one to the other. And what that does is it creates this almost disharmony because you haven't shown the viewer how you got there. You just kind of jumped.
Like a transition.
Yeah, you need that transition in. Obviously, art has no rules. I always want to do a little disclaimer. There's no rules in art. So what I'm telling you here is not an art rule, because there are none. But this is how nature does it. When I've done a lot of plein air painting, nature works this way. And I've learned a lot about color use from plein air painting and studying from reference, photography, or from actual being out there in real life, plein air painting. Okay, so let's make.
I want to make sure. So for people who, if at any point in there you started to tune out because you see what is essentially like a graph, it's getting into the math side of art. It can feel like for some people, it's just that all colors are oppositional. A color is only one thing in comparison to something else. It's going to be your quickest thing to be able to plan your other colors that you're laying down when you start to actually do a render thing past something that's even flat. And it's also a concept you'll use during your flats. Just know that is your prerequisite thing, and then we'll see what all goes into that. There are a couple questions here. If you
please, hit me, and I'll get painting too. But go ahead.
So Philip Chuki in the chat. I don't know if you want to disagree with this at all, but they said, because I'm running the stream now. Class today is I will show you that mixing yellow and blue makes green. Class dismissed. Thank you all for checking out the stream. Do you disagree with anything that Philip has said here?
Philip is correct. Mixing yellow and blue does make green, but it's funny with digital. Sometimes that actually is not how digital mixing works. That's how pigment works. But if I grab a yellow and put it down and grab the blue and put it down, you notice it's not really mixing a green. It's I don't know, sort of green. If I sample this, it is a green, but it's not the same richness. I'm putting down a very saturated yellow and a very saturated blue, and it's not. Notice how gray the resulting green is. It's a very grayish green. If you did that with pigment, the resulting green would be very saturated. Digital mixing, you can't mix digital colors the same way you do traditionally, unless you're using an app that's specifically programmed for that. And there are apps like that. I think Rebel, is it called Rebel, is like that.
Yeah.
I've actually never used that one, but I've heard and there's other apps that do it as well that mimic pigment. which is nice. And you can absolutely work that way. I do the good old color picking here, just here in Photoshop, which is the app I generally use. But Philip brings up a good distinction about that I was kind of referring to earlier. Mixing pigment is a bit of a different experience than digital mixing. So knowing because I came from a traditional background, if I wanted a green traditionally, I would mix it with yellow and blue. With digital, I wouldn't mix it, I would pick it. But the experience traditionally would really help me visualize what that green would look like if I mixed it. But that's something that people can explore, at their own will. If you want to get more color experience, I do recommend working with pigments. Just get some gouache paint or acrylic paint. They're both water soluble, easy to clean up. Okay.
Yeah. And you fell right into my trap on that one, Marco, because you just answered like 5 people's questions in there.
Oh, nice. All right.
Yeah.
Do that.
This was perfect. It was so good. Nice.
All right. Well, I'm going to start painting something, and let's talk about the strategy I'm using on this palette. Okay. We all know that light versus dark contrast, light versus dark. Let me just put a versus dark, and I'll just paint those again. We all know that high contrast, high value contrast kind of draws your attention, right? And I'm certainly using that here. This lecture is more about color, but let me just grayscale this off. Obviously, we're drawn to the main characters, even in grayscale, because they just pop out value-wise, right? I've made my background so that I have pitted very clear lights against darks, and it's the same with Ariel. Her lights pop out against comparatively darks, right? I could sample this, and we see the same. There's like the fish, flounder versus the background. That's a big jump. He's there, background's there. Ariel's is sort of the same thing. Her flesh tone is up here, and what's like her hair / background, it's way down there. In fact, there are parts of Ariel that go very close to black. Like if I sampled around the depths of her hair there and stuff, that's essentially black. High contrast equals attention. That's how you draw attention. Now, you can couple that with color contrast. Color contrast is warm versus cool. So let me just go back to color here. That's what I'm doing here. I am saying, the main characters, I'll just sample a few colors around them here. The main characters exist in these very warm hues, hues I already talked about that are stereotypically in the warm part of the color wheel. And then look at what's around them. These heavy blues and some purples in there, different kinds of blues, cyan blues, purples, in this range of the color wheel. I'm basically doing the classic, what I say, 4th grade thing that I was introduced all those years ago, basic warm versus cool. Now, that will get you attention. It'll draw someone's attention. What makes harmony, though, what makes the picture look pleasing is I have to find a bridge, the path between these colors. And that is where you get a little bit more advanced with color, because you have to start thinking about, okay, what colors am I going to show the viewer along the way? Now let's paint, and I'll talk about just that, okay? The first thing I do when I paint is I kill the white of the canvas. This is something I very rarely say the word always and never, but I always kill the white of the canvas unless the background needs to be white or something. But in this case, I kill the canvas. Are you there making notes, Stephen? I hear like tippity-tapping typing. Are you making notes?
You hear typing?
Yeah.
Oh, no. That means I'm on the wrong microphone, guys.
That's why you're so quiet.
Uh-huh.
Can you change
Let's
microphones?
change this up. Absolutely. You guys all let me down. John, Marco, you guys should have known.
Hey, I'm the one who pointed it out.
This might be really loud now.
Okay.
How is this? Does this sound different?
It sounds the same to me, but did you switch mics?
Oh, crimes. I thought I did. All right. I'm going to see about something. Continue.
Okay, you do that. I'll keep talking. So I filled the canvas with what I call a pool of neutrals, meaning neutrals is another way of saying gray. So if you look at the color wheel, when I say neutrals or if I say grays, it's the same thing. And I apologize, I use them interchangeably. Sometimes I'll say neutrals, sometimes I'll say grays. Neutrals or / grays are like, if I were to give you a sort of radius or diameter of it, it's like in this range. anything in here is like a neutral color. As you can see, if I sample them, it's like in the square color picker, it's like in this range. It could be any color. The color doesn't matter. The hue, blue, purple, yellow, orange, whatever. It's just in like this little range here, okay? Represented by kind of the inner ring of this color wheel. So when I fill my canvas, when I kill the white of the canvas, I always do a little pool of neutrals, meaning I shift from warm to cool. And as you can see, like right away, there's a little harmony going on right away. And that's because grays connect colors, as I've already demonstrated. Gray is a passport. You know, gray here is a passport to every hue, because every hue has gray in common. So if you start gray or neutral, not perfectly gray, obviously, because then you'll have no color. If you start neutral with all your colors, you can then build in any direction. And generally speaking, it'll be easier to maintain color harmony. The trick is not building out equally in all directions. That will be a recipe to ruin your color harmony, because suddenly things will look scattered. But in this painting, I'm only building out in two directions, mainly. So let's start doing this. And you'll see that as I work on this, my drawing is going to be very simple, because you don't need, when you're studying color, the nice thing about studying color is you don't need a masterful drawing. In fact, I learned from Morgan Weisling, actually, who has a new class out on Proko. I really want to check it out.
Good pitch, Marco.
Yeah. Morgan Weisling was the first to tell me through one of his DVDs that when you're studying color, you can almost throw drawing out the window. Not totally, but you don't have to draw like a master draftsman. You don't got to be Jeff Watts out here. You can be just a good old sketcher. And this is Ariel, by the way, that I'm drawing here. As you can see, I just got a basic gesture in there. There's her tail fin sort of thing. There's her belly button. She's just kind of lying down on this rock. There's her other arm. Perfect. And then the flounder is like this spaceship type shape. All right. And there we go. So there's our characters. The background is dead simple. It's just a bunch of column-like sort of diagonal columns. Okay. Now, I took a very basic strategy for this painting, because this actually relates to a little fun little story here. This was a early concept for the Little Mermaid movie, which looks nothing like this. Absolutely nothing like this. But the original conceit of the style was they were looking at using the cartoon, like the 90s one that we all remember, and like kind of making that more painterly in 3D. So that's what I did. I had 8 hours to paint this. My art director emailed me at like 9 a.m. or 7 a.m., whatever. He's like, I need this by like 6 p.m. tonight. So go.
Wow.
So yeah, it was one of the more stressful jobs I've had. And this was the painting.
When you tackle something like that, do you use the same process that you do when you teach something academically, or were you taking more shortcuts than you would normally recommend for a learner?
I'm not. I guess the only shortcut I took was there is a bit of photo bashing in here, like some of these items in the background, like that. I think that actually started as a photo of a real globe that I just Googled and like pasted it in and then painted over it. So there is some photo bashing here. But it's largely hand painted. Okay. You can see like the background's very abstract when I go in full here. But yeah, I think this prop, like this toy that she's looking at, the music box, that was a prop that I had access to, and I pasted that in and painted over it. But mostly it's still just hand painted. But kind of the other part of your question is, I still did shortcut in the sense that I just knew that my limited time frame, I wanted to be super bold with my warm versus cool choices. That made it faster to paint. This one, as we'll get into later in the stream, this one was more subtle. There's a lot more subtle transitions in this one. This was like a few days of painting. This was, like I said, 1 day of painting over several hours. So let me go back to my image here and make sure these are on screen.
Real quick, Marco, do I sound different and better to you now?
Yeah, I think you do. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
And I haven't heard any typing, so that's good. I mean, I enjoyed the typing, but I wasn't trying to call it.
It's real rhythmic, melodic ASMR energy.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so let's talk about my strategy. Okay, I'll make a new layer. I'll set it to like overlay mode so I can kind of glaze over my drawing here. I knew that I wanted the characters to be warm, so I kind of, in this case, I can kind of like sort of scribble in some very warm colors. And what I'm doing here is I'm setting the stage for a very obvious difference between warm and cool. On the color wheel, I'm essentially starting with sort of my neutrals, and I'm instantly going, boom, I want big warm statements that go, from the neutral that go out here. Now I'm doing the thing that earlier I said you shouldn't do, that I'm just jumping to those. I'll build the transition in a moment. I'm jumping to those to get me like fully blocked in here. And then what I'll do, again, pushing that color, I want the cool colors to be out here. That gives me this, let me just undo a few steps here. That gives me this full range, this big range of warm versus cool. It's easier to handle because it's such a big jump. It's easier to see your warm versus cools. It's harder to be subtle with it. So it was easier for me to paint and easier for me to also block in because I was able to just start pushing some saturation here, knowing that I could handle the transition as my next step. And you'll see how when I get to this painting, that represents a total reversal of this. So let's see. So these are like two diametrically opposed processes, but that use the same theory. Okay. And that's the nice thing about warm versus cool sort of color temperature theory, is that the theory never changes. Like, it's not like warm versus cool works different from painting to painting. The colors you're using can be different, but the overall concept you're shooting for is always the same. And that is relating your warms to your cools, connecting them with paths. Okay, so I've got like a contrast built in here. Let me flatten this down, and I can let me darken it a bit so I have some more value to work with. And essentially what I want to do now is I want to get some kind of shadow pattern going. It's the classic way that painters draw, is you can throw in shadow patterns. So I'll do that on the Ariel character here. And here is the first step toward me building this path. Okay, so what I'm about to show you is very important. I'm thinking about her shadows, and this particular shadow over her face is a kind of a critical part of the painting. It's like the whole painting is kind of contained in this shadow. Can you see all the little color jumps? Those are all purposeful. What those are doing is they are showing you the path. That is, I'll show you on the color wheel. I'll show you my path. Just zoom in a little bit on this. Okay, so I've got my warms, which are here, and my cools, which are, in there. As you can see with my shadow colors, I'm picking them now, and you can see kind of what they're doing. I want to point out two things that they're doing. One is they represent hues that go from here, roughly this area. Let me enlarge this. The hues go roughly from this area, and they kind of progress down, like to the blues. Also, when they do that, they are kept close-ish to the grays, like in the neutral range. I'll sample them again. You see this? Okay, what that is doing on my color path, it is doing this. It's not going directly through gray. It's not doing that. It's skirting around it though, like this. So the colors kind of go like this. This is nature's most common path going. It's like the gray becomes a kind of a gravity well. It pulls the colors toward it like this. It pulls the colors toward it. So you can't, you very rarely get a path like this, because that will look too candy coated. It'll look kind of false or just overly saturated. It'll look like a child's toy or something. That the gray, which is here, is going to pull the colors in, like it has a gravitational force or something. And therefore you end up with a path that looks more, like this. So let me now start painting, and we will pick those colors. That is, we will mix them on the painting. Okay. If you, yeah. So we're mixing color, we're picking color. It really results in the same thing. And by the way, just a quick tech spec. You notice my canvas is fairly small on the screen. That's on purpose. It helps you paint quicker. Now, when when I was doing this actual painting here, yes, my canvas was larger because it was like an actual professional job. So my canvas was larger. But if you're studying, I really recommend keeping your canvas smaller, because you don't have to, again, you don't have to have a masterful drawing in there. So I'm going to paint the general light of the head. And now for my shadows, I'm going to go obviously darker in value. I'm going to go grayer, which is getting cooler. And I can pick, and I can start with my warmer colors in here, but I've gone grayer and darker. That gets me cooler. So I can block in this shadow to start with. And like, I don't even care what that color is. Like I can sample it and say, oh, okay, it's there. But that doesn't mean anything to me. What means something is I've picked a grayer color, which is cooler by definition, because it's cooler than that, as I showed you with that opening chart, right? But once I'm in the neutrals, remember this relates back to my early block in, but when I tone the canvas, once I'm in my neutrals, I can kind of be anywhere. So I'm going to take advantage of this position I'm in here and like start scumbling in neutral purples, neutral blues. I can like start dancing around the color wheel, which, what am I doing? I'm showing the viewer this path going from...
There is one question here. So I want to make sure, because I think this is kind of the thing that we're talking around right now. Amunur asked, how should the color temperature of ambient occlusion relate to the temperature of the rest of the shadow?
Okay, that's a good question. And that's funny because that is the one exception to everything I'm saying. I'll give you a very simple one sentence answer. Ambient occlusion, just keep it warm. Just keep it warm. There's no rhyme or reason. Now, my default ambient occlusion is like that color right there. I just go to somewhere in the reds and I go, boom, that color. It's like a mid-saturated warm. The thing that happens with our eyes, remember our eyes are instruments to see light. Our eyes are made to resolve light, not dark. We don't see well in the dark. So when you get very dark with your value, the color matters a lot less. Because we're not seeing it as much. You can even see it here on the color wheel. Like I can, as I'm shifting colors, if you kind of focus in on the bottom here, I can barely tell the difference. I can only start telling the difference when I'm about here on the value scale. When I'm down here, I can't really tell. Now, it just so happens that warm ambient occlusion tends to look better. You can try this yourself. If you use cooler ambient occlusion, it'll work again because value matters way more at this especially when you're that dark. But for some reason, it seems to be more true to life to use more warm ambient occlusion. And that's something I learned from Richard Schmid, who was asked the same question in one of his workshops. And he's like, yeah, just a dark red. And, he called it, fine art painters call it dark accent. They're not hip with the terms like we are. Ambient occlusion is a 3D term.
Yeah, it's like all like 3D modeling.
It's a programming things. It's a 3D modeling term, but it really accurately describes what's happening. Ambient occlusion, like this area of her hair, it's the ambient light is occluded by tight spaces. Ambient occlusion. It's a perfectly good term. It just sounds overly technical, unfortunately.
Yeah,
but
that
it's a great
one
term.
and subsurface scattering. There's two wildly handy concepts that are the most succinct name they possibly can be, but still sound so technical.
Yeah, so programmery. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So now, hang on, guys, 2 seconds. I'm going to turn off this heater because it's actually getting really hot in here.
Sounds good. I have some questions lined up for you. If you want
hit me, and I'll paint. Yeah, I'm going to paint and answer questions. Then I'll go back and talk about what I just did.
Okay. Sounds good. So first and foremost, Bubblegum 03 had a revelation with you talking about everything. They said picking from a color wheel is so genius and so simple. I'm shook.
Awesome.
And then Mel was asking, with digital art, since different screens show colors differently, how do we manage that? I have my computer screen and my XP pen screen, and they differ in saturation.
That's a very tough reality of us digital painters. Same with me. I have two screens here. I paint, ironically, I'm painting on a tablet, but I have a Cintiq here as my monitor. Cintiqs are just any Wacom stuff is a beautiful monitor. I love them. But I also have a very cheap and crappy LCD screen that I'm looking at. When I look here, I'm looking at my LCD screen. The colors are wildly different. Honestly, it depends on where you are publishing to. If you are printing, then it's all about the final print. I do proofs. Do a proof, see what the colors look like, adjust your monitor or adjust your painting to the print. If you are publishing like online, like just posting on Instagram or whatever it is, your social media, then it's a kind of a trite answer, but look at your paintings on as many monitors as you can. Your phone, both your screens, your friend's monitor, your friend's phone, and you'll kind of over time get a sense for what colors generally look like and how they're reproduced on different media, different technologies, I guess. So like there is no definitive answer to that. The only advice I have is definitely paint on the best monitor you have, because you want the most possible range of contrast, the best color fidelity, and then adjust from there. So like, for example, I remember years ago, my monitor was very bright. So my paintings would look very dark on other screens. So I adjusted my monitor accordingly. You can calibrate that way, but I wouldn't limit the screen you're painting on. Get the best possible primary monitor. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah.
I know it's...
Yeah. No, I think it's perfect. Yeah, because honestly, that does also happen in some ways to people who are working traditionally. There are times where a person, like in art school, the room that we were in when we were doing our gesture studies for like any sort of quick life drawing things, the lights in there sucked. They were awful. They were really yellow. But it mattered a little less in that situation because we were just working with charcoal on newsprint, you know? But if they had tried to put like a some sort of like painting or heavy color use class in there, everyone would have come out with light having kind of like bullied their colors into being something that was different than what it was if you took it somewhere else.
Yeah,
The same concepts apply.
Same concept, yeah. Adjust to traditional is even harder because, like you said, you have to have physical lighting that helps. But that's a different conversation, obviously. Similar ideas, but different strategies, obviously. Yeah,
absolutely. There's one really important question here from Skooma Joe.
Yeah, go ahead, and then remind me after this question. I want to kind of talk about what I've done, but go ahead and ask this one. Yeah,
absolutely. So Skooma Joe said, "Mr. Bucci, I don't have any experience painting with physical media, but I enjoy drawing on my iPad in Procreate. Would your class on painting be a good course for beginner painters?"
Yeah, for sure. I try and do this with all my teaching. I try and make it accessible for beginners all the way through to, let's say, like higher level intermediate. Like I try and span that. That is, like a beginner will find something really helpful and an intermediate person may know some stuff, but will also find stuff that's really helpful. So yes, the short answer is yes. I do really try and design all my classes for that span of levels. I have one class called Drawing for Experienced Beginners. That one is only for beginners, but every other class I have, including all my painting classes, are all for beginner all the way to like a higher level intermediate, I would say.
This is a great time to bring up and remind you guys that this whole stream that we're doing here today, while being full of knowledge, is a little bit in support of the idea that you can buy Marco's courses for very cheap right now. They're 20% off on Proko with the code BLACK20 during our Black Friday sale, which runs all month. You can find that over here at the link that you see on screen right now, or the link in the description, or the link in the chat that's pinned. All of those will take you to the same place where you can get plenty of courses that you can replay after the fact, where Marco goes a little bit more in depth on all these concepts and really focuses down into individual demos rather than having to like take a break here and there because I have questions from the chat. So if you guys want to find out more, go to those links. Marco, you wanted to explain what you were doing in your process.
Yes, thank you for reminding me. Yeah. Okay, so as I've been blocking in the lights and shadows, colors on Arial here, again, the drawing is kept rudimentary on purpose, just so I can focus on the color. But here's the idea. If you notice what I've done with the shadows, I'm just going to enlarge the color picker here. If I can do that, which I can't. There we go. Don't watch the painting. Watch the picker for a second. Watch my shadow colors, kind of dancing around sort of this range of hues and also being contained in the neutrals. I just want to reinforce to everyone that that is me showing you the path from warm to cool. And I'm doing it entirely in Ariel's shadows because she's the main, she's the focal point, or at least part of the focal point. I want to make sure that I communicate the path in that area because that's the most important part of the painting. It wouldn't make sense for me to like put all that information there because like that's the corner of the painting. I don't want anyone to really mind to bother looking there. They'll know it's there, but I don't want to put tons of color info there. It doesn't make sense. It makes way more sense to put that transition in the focal point. Now, how I can expand from that is, watch this. I can take those colors that exist in the neutrals now, any one of these, let's just pick this one, okay? Whatever, it doesn't matter. Any one of those. And I can start now making it a little bit more saturated, and I'll get a soft brush, and I can find areas where I can start putting that in the painting, because now I kind of have access to that color now. Back to the color wheel. If I, again, warm, cool. I know I could just draw this once and leave it, but I feel like drawing it several times will help reinforce it, especially if people are just tuning in now. I've given you this path, right? I'm giving you this path. Well, once I'm in any one of these colors, I can like branch out and get little offshoots, you know, that becomes viable now. I've earned my way there. So I can take any sort of one of my colors in the path and get more saturated with it, which I feel like answers another question I get commonly is people, I get the question a lot, like, how do you handle saturation? And this is how you earn your saturated colors, by having their grayer, more neutral counterparts in your painting. That allows you then to branch out, get more saturated, and still maintain harmony. Now, you don't want to get equally saturated everywhere. That would, I said it earlier, that would throw your harmony out the window. It just, color doesn't work like that, unfortunately. There are no rules, you can do it. But if you want your painting to kind of remind the viewer of like how nature works and generally how we perceive color, you don't want to get equally saturated everywhere. You kind of just want to pick and choose a few. There are no rules as to how many colors can get saturated. That's up to, you know, personal taste and stuff like that. You know, this is where artists are artists, right? Different artists will find all kinds of interesting things to do with color. But this is a general sort of truth about how color works. I can do the same thing, by the way, for her hair. I really want her hair, like she has, everyone knows Ariel has like bright red hair. I want to make sure that my warm colors include the reds, because that's how I'm going to access the reds of her hair. So my warm colors are like this range here. Still a pretty narrow range, right? And this is the other concept of color that I want to make clear. If you are, let me just enlarge the color wheel yet again. If you are at a color, like let's say you're here or wherever, it could be here or here, wherever you are. Let's go here. You are allowed, there are no rules. You can like make little varieties, you know, like let me make a new canvas here and just quickly, like, let's say we start here, right? We have a painting, you know, where this represents a small part of our painting. We have this color. You can like go a little bit more saturated here, a little less saturated there, move a little bit there and go a little saturated, you know, a little more red. You're allowed these, I call them vibrations, color vibrations. Mm-hmm. That's the term I use in my color survival guide course. You're allowed these little color vibrations at any time. They are not major enough moves to matter. Just keep them, you know, micro, little minuscule color vibrations like I've shown here on the color wheel, and you'll be fine. There are even different strategies to handle that, which the course gets more into. But in general, those little micro movements you're allowed to. So like, here's where I'll use them. I've got her red hair. Well, I want some oranges in there. I can just make that little micro move, keep the saturation. As long as it's a micro movement, you can keep the saturation, throw away the gray stuff, doesn't matter. You don't need to think about gray if you're doing little micro changes. You only need to think about gray when you're doing big changes, like I'm doing in this painting. Okay. So I can have some oranges. I can even micro move even a bit more, you know, and you can see that in my painting, right? You can see how I've done that. Sometimes just a good old brush set to overlay mode fits the bill for this. So I have a preset right there. You know, I can kind of get a brush on overlay mode and just sort of very lightly with my tablet brush this in. And here's what, talking about color mixing, look what's happening here. As I brush this in, not only is it affecting Ariel's hair, but it's kind of bled into the background. Like, see this area here? Well, what is that color? Look at what it's done here. It's taken the
It's going towards the gray.
Going toward the gray. Photoshop is doing it for me. That was overlay mode, by the way. Overlay is my favorite blending mode. I don't use blending modes often. I feel like that Modelo guy, or that whatever. What's that beer guy? I don't use Modelo. I don't use.
I don't.
Yeah, the most interesting one.
But when I do,
but when I do, it's overlay.
We can make that short, Marco. We can make that. It'll go huge on TikTok.
Yeah. Hit me up after. We'll do it. That's amazing. Okay. There's another big shift in the hair. If you look at her hair in my original painting here, notice how it's warm here, but what happens when we get over here, like to the other side of it, where it's more in shadow? Look at that. It has become more purple. So what I'm doing with the hair specifically, this is another thing that relates to the grays, but it also relates to dealing with saturation. The hair in light, I've got pretty warm, like a very saturated warm red, right?
Mm-hmm.
In shadow, it doesn't quite get all the way to blue. The path it takes, so if we imagine our cool colors around here, I want the path, again, to be pulled toward the gray because of that gravity thing. The path kind of looks like this. So when I get to the shadows of her hair, I'm in kind of like a slightly more neutral, but still medium saturated purple, as you can see. And that is because when you have a path like this, the gray, it doesn't pull it like that. It kind of just does this. If this color were up here, then the gray has a much more dominant role. Or if the color were like here, the gray has a much more dominant role because you're like crossing more territory. Mm-hmm. But if you're here, the gray doesn't quite have a pull. If I were here, I probably wouldn't even have to acknowledge the gray. And that's true for green too. If I were here, I wouldn't have to acknowledge the gray. If I were here though, I would have to acknowledge the gray because that gravity has more time to pull it in. Okay. So this is, again, it's the key of color. I swear, understanding how gray works is the key of color.
We do have a couple questions around these ideas. So a lot of people are confused about two concepts that seem related to this. Okay. So Migueris in the chat said, what's with greens or purple tones in skin that I see in paintings that look natural, but when I do, it looks like smeared paint? And then someone else asked how to avoid muddier tones. So I think these might be disparate but adjacent ideas. Yeah. Like, how do people avoid the idea of ending up with just muddy colors with all of this, but still get that color vibration variation that you want? Okay.
I'm going to attempt to dispel a rumor here. Muddy color is actually a value problem. I'll show you what I mean. If I were to, I'll do it on my actual painting. If I were to paint, let me sample her shadows here. Okay, there's the value. If you kind of see where it is on the value chart there. Mm-hmm. If I wanted, if I chose like a blue or whatever, and I did this, it's fine because it's the right value. But if I got my value wrong and did this, or maybe even lighter, maybe did this, this will look, and I had variations that were the wrong value. This will start looking muddy because it's the wrong value. Or you can go the other way. If it's too gray and you have the wrong value, things will start looking off because the modeling is not right. The values are not right. Muddy color.
For those who might not know, what is like a quick, one sentence thing about value?
Okay. Let me grayscale this off. Value is what makes the form read. We don't need color to see 3 dimensions, only value. So when you get your value wrong, like if I wanted to render the light of her arm and I was too dark with it, this is the wrong value, which means any color I put there will look wrong, not because it's the wrong color. It could be the right hue, but it's the wrong value. So going back into color, if I just got the wrong value, this will start looking, if you did this over and over and made this mistake over and over in your painting, it will look muddy, but it's not a color problem. It's a value problem. It's a modeling problem. I promise you that's true. If you get your values right, you've probably heard this old adage, painters have been saying this for years and years. If you get your values right, you can almost get away with murder with color because the value is what controls the form.
For one person in the chat, they were asking very specifically, what is the benefit to starting from grayscale and then going to color? This is why. This is why people approach that with that goal.
Exactly. That is indeed the benefit of starting grayscale. You will find, I found, and I know this is true with several students as well, you probably will find that works for a while, but eventually it kind of stunts your color use because there's only so many techniques to build color into a grayscale painting and have it feel, I guess, colorful in the end. I remember when I would do it, and there's so many different ways. Some of them get very technical, how color maps, how to build these colors in. I always remember that when I would do that, my paintings always felt like digital colorings rather than painting. If you start feeling that way, I would recommend jumping over to just starting with color, like actually paint, like I'm doing here, paint with color. Now, do your value studies. Definitely do your value studies first, especially if you feel less comfortable in that arena. Your value studies have to be like properly done and good enough that you can go to color, because there's no use fighting with color if your values are not understood, because you'll just be fighting a double losing battle, and that's no fun. But yeah, that is like Steven said, that is the point of starting with grayscale, is you at least can sort of bypass the muddy color problem that way, so long as you maintain your grayscale rendering as you add color, of course.
Yeah, you can still, there's still ways for that to go wrong, for sure.
Yeah,
like you said in there.
Yep. So here, a quick thing. I'm picking the shadow, like her arm is very yellow right now. So I have to pick what's called a halftone. A halftone is, actually, you know what? Back up. I'm going to pick a shadow. As you can see, her arm goes into shadow, like it's light there and shadow there, right? Okay, so I'm going to pick that shadow. But unlike the body here, I'm not going to use these cooler colors. I am going to use a cooler color, but I still want to keep it more in the reds. I just think there might be some bounce light coming up from the sun that, you know, illuminates it more warmly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick my yellow, and I'm still going to go going on the color wheel here. Her arm currently is like somewhere here. I still want to go this way. That is toward cool. I'm still taking this path, but I kind of want to stop the path there. I'll go a little bit grayer to respect the gravity pull of the gray, but I still want to end up in the red. So I'll just kind of like shift it down, darker for shadow, and just slightly grayer. And there, you know, there's my shadow color. And then I can micro move from there, which I said before, you always have access to those little micro movements, right? Bit redder, bit more orangey, whatever. Hit me with another question, Steven. I feel like I cut you off there.
Oh, no, you're fine. Yeah, we definitely have like a little bit of internet, like Skype call going on, like a little bit of the run over. But so let's see. I think some of the other questions that people have had here that they don't necessarily fully relate to the exact thing being demoed in this exact moment. Someone had asked about the idea of rendering processes. So keeping track of what you do. How do you not lose track of your process? And then Jana had asked, Marco, I see that you often use, quote, like drunk colors, as you do not paint inside the lines. I get that you soften edges this way, but your colors often flow way out of your subject. Is there like a motivation for this? And how do you keep that consistent while breaking out of the shapes like that?
Hi, Yana, first of all.
Oh, is that Yana?
That's Yana, yeah. I think it is anyway. I'm not looking at the chat. Sorry, can you repeat the last bit of that question after the drunk color stuff?
Yeah. So, if you're breaking out of your shapes like this, how do you kind of like keep track of that and keep that consistent? And then also, what motivates that?
Okay. Yeah, good question. The shapes get, at least for me, it's funny. My next YouTube video is kind of about this more, but my shapes get dialed in later. I kind of approach the painting kind of the opposite of how a lot of people do, and not that anyone's right or wrong here, but the way I approach it is I don't start with a line drawing. Like almost never will I start with line drawing unless I have to paint from someone else's drawing, like which happens. Then I'll start from like their line drawing. But if I'm painting the whole thing myself, I never start. Excuse me. I never start with lines. I always start like this. And what that means is I kind of am very, it gives me the ability to be very expressive and brushy and drunk color first. And then I can dial in the shapes later. As you can see, that's been happening here with Ariel. Like, obviously I'm not going to have her fully rendered by the end of this, but I could, like, give me another 3 hours and I'd have her fully rendered. The shapes would be there, you know? So I approached painting in the reverse order in that sense that a lot of people do. A lot of people start with their line drawing, which gives them the shape. I find the shape later. That allows me to focus on what I feel is, for me, my most expressive part of painting, the color and edges and brushwork. And then the shapes are super important, but I get to them later. I try and approximate them, though. As you can see, like Ariel is approximated here. And if I weren't talking while I'm doing this, like this drawing would be a little bit better at the start. But even when I study, it's like this. Like my plein air paintings kind of look like this. And I just kind of refine as I go. you can always get that shape back as you work.
Absolutely. Which I do think is something that people who work digitally often kind of strive for maintaining the perfection of something during it, much more than a person who comes from a traditional background.
Yes,
Because
yes,
in
that's a very
traditional
good point.
work, yeah, like you don't have this like it must stay precise at every level. You
Yeah.
have to paint over your initial sketch. Like
Yeah.
you kill your darlings at every phase and then refine them as you go.
Yeah,
And it's
that's a
okay to do
very
that
good.
digitally.
That's a very good point. I'm a big fan of so I think someone asked about like keeping everything in check as you work. That is how you do it. The idea, at least for me, what works for me is you never want to be precious about where every line goes and keeping every line. That's kind of one of the potential downfalls of starting with a line drawing is you feel like you're so precious about the lines right away. You want to have the freedom to lose things and find them later. You lose things now, 10 minutes later, you find it again. Then you lose it, then you find it. That is how art can evolve in a very organic way. And as you do those push and pulls, you won't be able to help but inject your own style and personality into the work. That's how I paint. I find things as I go. And for people who enjoy my paintings, because I know this because they've told me when I'm at Lightbox and stuff and I talk to people, that's what they like about my stuff is like they feel like the energy is on the canvas. And that's because I'm constantly finding it as I go. When I'm done, like when I call a painting finished, it's not like everything is fully resolved. It's just I have resolved the focal point enough and I have resolved the supporting elements enough that they support the focal point that I feel like the picture communicates it. But I could go into aerial here. I could easily go in and render any given part more. Like it's not like this is a perfectly done statement. I could definitely render it more, but I feel like it's there enough. The ideas are established. Values work, colors work. I like the brush work. That it's a finished statement. So you're never like finishing the image. It's a finished statement. And I feel like if you can get a process going where you are always kind of pushing and pulling things rather than being rigid about a vision from the start, you'll probably find your process a lot more readily.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's also for anyone who's here who's just predominantly like someone who draws over painting. I think you also kind of discover that as you learn to just do like gesture studies, just getting the line of motion, you start to have this economy of information that I think that you only gain with experience. And it's a pretty common question that comes up. A person who talks about like, why is drawing in 1 minute? Why is this supposed to be good? I only draw half the figure. It's just learning what means something and what doesn't. And that extends to a bunch of other art topics and other art.
Yeah. You start developing just the language of like the visual language. We all probably are familiar with that term, visual language. It's literally like speaking English in this case. We aren't, I'm not thinking about the words I'm saying, just like you guys don't have to. You know the language, you can speak it. And that means like when you have to correct yourself and when you don't have to correct yourself. Painting is like that. Art is like that. You have to find a process that is not perfect from the start, but something that you can understand the parameters of as you go. Does this need a bit of pushing or pulling or losing or finding? Is this too colorful or too gray? Like that's the kind of visual language stuff that ultimately you are looking to be fluent in. And that is where hopefully, a lecture like this will hopefully helps. I am getting to the background now here, guys, just because I feel like I was getting tunnel vision there a little bit. Value, this lecture is not about value, but I do value-wise, I do want to have, I don't want to have like this all be dark and then the light's just there. I want to have some kind of motivating light source, right? So, I'll get out my overlay and I will just start with, I've got this like soft brush thingy, sort of like half airbrush, half hard brush. And I just start blocking this in where I kind of want some light. And this is where the background starts resolving a little bit. All right. I am finished with that thought. Stephen, feel free to hit me with another question.
Let's see what we got here.
If there is one.
Yeah, we have a few here. It's not a big backlog though. You guys should say more, please. So Charlie Dagger Davies was asking in traditional media, would you suggest establishing the value system during the underpainting stage before thinking much about color?
Hi, Charlie. Good to see you. Yeah, yes. If you are doing the underpainting, well, okay, there's sort of two answers. I didn't do that here. I just primed the canvas with the neutral colors that were the same value, like roughly the same value. So what I was doing was I was setting the stage for color only, and then I'm finding the value scheme as I work, which is how I built this. Like I didn't have like a reference for this other than some basic poses of the character, like just full transparency. Those poses are taken from the original animation. I didn't invent those poses. I painted them, but I had the poses, but I had to invent the value scheme as I went. There was no, like, this frame is not in the movie. So I had to invent the value scheme as I went, which I did just the same way I'm doing now. I'm like, okay, I want these dark columns to kind of flank the piece. So you have like a dark column here and a dark column there. This kind of helps the eye sort of be led to the focal point. Obviously, I don't want them to be blacks. I want them to be in my cool range. I'm very deeply in my cooler part of the color, my color palette here, as I talked about earlier in the chat. But value-wise, if I switch this to grayscale, I'm very interested now in making sure that I'm developing a value scheme that kind of aims its contrast in the middle. And if I can use diagonal lines like this, then all the better. Diagonal lines just tend to have a bit more action to them. I don't know if this is inherently true, but I have found over my exploration of art over the years that diagonal lines have more motion to them. It's almost like a motion blurry thing. I'm not sure why, but I typically avoid pure horizontals or pure verticals. And at least in compositions, I kind of favor diagonals more. But that is getting away from the question. But yes, I establish my value range, my value structure in the process of the painting. Or if I need something to be more worked out beforehand, I will do a thumbnail, like a very small painting, specifically with the goal of establishing a value pattern. And I'll do that in grayscale. And then I won't paint my color directly on that canvas, because again, it's small. Like, it'll be 500 pixels wide. I will open a new canvas, make it as big as I want to do, and have my thumbnail off to the side and recreate it, but now with color. Hopefully that makes sense
to me. Yeah, no, very much so. There's one other question. So this is from Ermangerd. So they were asking, sometimes I see like hair/beard hairlights like bluish. And I tried to paint it with bluish tone, but it doesn't feel right. And then I tried to color pick it, and it was a brighter color of the same color. What do you think is behind this idea of them seeing something that is that different?
Hair is funny because hair is kind of waxy, and think of like a plant leaf, which are also sometimes waxy. Those can have like bluish highlights. I totally know what you're saying, Ermangerd. But I don't. I mean, I think it relates back to a value thing. Make sure it's mostly about getting your values right, but definitely hair can have little bluish tints. Usually they're in the lighter values, as hair is very reflective because it's waxy. The highlights can go bluer. Just make sure your values are right, and your colors should start working. Without seeing an example, it's a little hard for me to. Yeah. That's like a super specific case, and without seeing the case in point, it's hard for me to kind of critique that one. But I do think it kind of goes back to values. But the observation is correct that hair can sometimes subvert warm versus cool by being cooler in its reflections, and that is a property of like waxy surfaces. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I very much agree. Without seeing the actual kind of photos that they're looking at most often, it's a little bit harder, because who knows? They could have pictures that are like really edited that they're looking at pretty often, where there's some kind of like color push that's introduced in post. See if it's something that's consistent across all the pictures that you look at, and then you'll kind of have a little bit more of an idea of whether that's a perception thing. Or something that's just coming out in your art,
Yeah, and definitely shoot your own reference too, like in conjunction with finding reference, because then at least what you've shot is honest because you took the picture. And if you took the picture, that means what the lighting was because you were there, and you can like maybe understand more what's happening based on that lighting situation. There's so many little varieties of like what type of light was there? Was it a photography set where they have like reflectors and stuff? If you take the photo, at least you eliminate those variables.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so Flounder's coming in here. Sorry, one quick thing here, Steven.
I was going to do exactly this. I was going to say, so where are we at now with this?
Thank you. Okay, so the same thing. Flounder is in the light, is very warm. It's got these very bright yellows and oranges and stuff. Some reds in here as his little cheeks are puffy, the classic sort of Disney puffy cheek thing. I'll get a bit redder there. But if you look in the shadows here, you notice it's not blue. I'm not going blue with it. That starts to look a bit muddy. What is happening? Well, that was the wrong value. That's why. But what's happening here is I'm getting cooler by going grayer, which let me go bring back my chart. Let me go back to that. So Flounder uses this chart specifically. Let me just start with this. Okay. Flounder starts here, like the warm lights are here, and his shadows get cooler. But in this case, I want to still keep them in the yellows. But all I got to do is choose colors that are here, which on the color wheel is like going from here in this way toward gray, and it will look cooler because it's on the path toward blues. When colors are diametrically opposed or complementary like this, you basically have to go through the gray. There's like, you can kind of skirt around it if you want, like that's totally fine. But in general, you really need to observe grays when colors are complementary, because that is the most direct path. So that's kind of what I'm doing with Flounder here. I'm getting grayer with his shadows, and that alone will make it look cooler. You can see it. What time is it? I want to make sure. Okay, 2:07.
Right now,
let me bring up
7 after. We're 7 minutes into our second hour.
Okay, cool. I want to bring up a piece of reference here that I partially used for this painting. This was photography from the movie. This was a concept for the book. This is a book I did. I had some movie photography on set. This is an interesting little snippet of what was going on. As you can see, it's very blue, but it's mostly blue over here. And then over here, it gets warmer. You guys can see it just visually, right? It looks cooler here, and warmer there. But who wants to guess what that color is going to be if I sample it? What's that color going to be? Watch this. I'll do it. Look at that. Would anyone have guessed that? That is, it's still in the cooler range, but yet it looks warm. Well, how is it doing that? Well, if we sample some of the cold colors, it's kind of doing this. The cold colors were about here. And then when I sampled that warm, it was about here. Well, it's going this way. The path is going this way, and that gray has been pulling it in, right? So the path in this piece, in this reference photo, follows this path, which honors the gray that I was talking about. If this extended way to the right, you actually might get some of these warm colors, but this is way too warm in this context. We're just not getting we're not getting all the way here. We're stopping about there. So this is the importance of understanding the paths that colors take, because you can use the full path like I'm doing in this mermaid painting, or you can cut the path in half like I did in this piece and still have warms and cools. So it's not a formula. It is a paradigm of understanding. It's like a mode of understanding how colors work that you can produce infinite amounts of results in. It's not like a formula implies you can only produce the same result every time. This is still leaves you tons of artistic freedom.
It's an oppositional thing that you were talking about earlier. There's nothing that's inherently loud or inherently silent, it's all in comparison to the other thing that's in that environment. Exactly.
Yeah. I remember John Mayer, the musician John Mayer, doing a lecture. It's on YouTube. I think it's at Harvard or something, or MIT, not Harvard, some music school in Boston. And he had his acoustic guitar, and he was just slamming his guitar. He's like, this is the loudest I can get. But if the whole song is like that, I can't go anywhere from there. So you tone it back to something a bit more neutral, just like color, and then you can get louder or you can get quieter. You never strategically, you generally don't want to start at your maximum point. You want to start somewhere, just tone back so that you can move in different directions. Yeah. Music really obviously music is art as well. So music really parallels painting.
Yeah, I think it's interesting all the things that overlap. Like the concepts, they typically translate in some way, shape, or form because all of the same concepts of like you were saying, for music, there's the idea of like this like rest point so that it means something when you get louder. The same thing applies to colors. The same thing applies to every type of human expression and creativity that applies to our senses. Flavor, everything else.
Yep, absolutely. It's all the same concept. Yep, absolutely. And that helps you develop that visual language we talked about. That is a core concept that you just outlined, Stephen. That is such a core concept to visual language that the sooner you can digest that in your painting, the better off you'll be, because you'll always kind of know where you're at. Think of music volume. You'll know where you're at in the loudness scale in terms of color temperature, how warm or cool you are, how much warmer or cooler you can get, how much warmer or cooler you want to get.
Maya P in the chat said something that I don't know if I've clocked anything like this.
Hey,
They
Maya's
said,
here. Maya.
Medium value, high saturation. I've never seen you pick. So I think they mean at the same time. I've never seen you pick these at the same time. Is that observation false?
Medium. Hi, Maya. Medium value, high saturation. I mean, I certainly don't. That certainly doesn't like ring true just hearing it. Like if it were, I'd be like, oh yeah, I totally do that.
Yeah,
But
this is the rule that I apply.
Yeah, I'm not having that reaction. So there's something that doesn't ring true to me about that. So I would say no, that's not a thing that I do. But like maybe, but like I know Maya's very observant. So like maybe she's right that is a choice that I make less and less. Okay, I'm gonna expand on that a little bit. Medium value being here, high saturation. That implies that a medium value is inherently a strange place to be in because in general, you're going to be between light and shadow at that point. Lights are light, shadows are dark. If you're in the middle, you're going to be in a transition state, light to shadow, warm to cool. So I guess there is some truth to what Maya is saying where it's less likely you're going to be super saturated in a medium value because that's naturally a transition zone, which as we've seen is kind of more influenced by gray, by neutrals. So like that is possibly true. But I mean, I think like in this background, like as I'm sampling here, like that's a medium saturated value right there. It's what I'm doing in this background, by the way. Go ahead.
I think they were looking for that full maximum saturation.
Yeah.
I think because they did come in and say middle right, I mean on the picker. So I don't know if they mean it like fully all the way over there. And Ranger in the chat said a thing I want to follow up with afterwards. Just putting that out there.
Oh yeah, just one last sentence on that. I rarely use the like 100% saturation anyway. Like just for me as a sort of a personal guideline, I just never feel the need to be full saturation. If I ever am, it's usually going to be, I guess as Maya's suggesting, it's usually going to be either in the light, favoring the light, or favoring the dark, because that is when I'm fully have made the transition from light to dark. So I guess I'm the most free to go saturated, I guess. But as a general principle for me, I very rarely use full saturation.
That being said, I think if people look at your work, they would say that it's very saturated, that it's this like high chroma kind of look.
Yeah. And that's true. And so I'm glad you said that, Stephen, because I get that a lot when I'm teaching or just get, fielding questions on whatever, Instagram or email. People will point out that my paintings feel very colorful or saturated. And I agree, like I do get there in the end. I get to saturated colors like I've got here. In fact, I'll call this one done. I'll move on. But what that comment misses is this part. This is the connecting tissue, this stuff here, and the hair going in shadow, like those little transitions that I've been talking about this whole time. Those and like here, these neutrals are the connecting tissue that gives the saturation meaning and place. If you look at here, like look at this little area of transition here in the water. Again, don't look at the painting, look at the color picker here. As I sample from the blue water into her hair, can you see that transition happening? See how it goes grayer than more saturated? That's the path I've been showing you guys this whole time. It's, water is like here, aerials there. It's like getting grayer while shifting hues and then more saturated. So my paintings use this all the time because nature uses this all the time. Again, it's not a formula thing. It's a like real life observation thing. And my goal as an artist has always been to give people something that is immediately identifiable and recognizable to their life. That is how color works in real life. What I inject is like a caricature. The subject matter is like cartoony and caricatured sometimes, but I mean, like, I'll push the colors maybe a little more than nature would, but along the same path that nature has already set out for me. That's my art style in a nutshell.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
So Ranger said, wouldn't high saturation affect the value? Marco?
Yeah.
Take it away.
Yeah. I have a very contentious YouTube video on that, where I explain that. But basically, the questioner is correct. Like, I'll show you here with blue. Let's say I have this gray, and I move my saturation out. You notice I'm not changing the value. I'm only changing saturation, right? Well, if I switch that to grayscale, this might blow some people's minds. It gets darker. That is an inherent property of color that I have a YouTube video about this. And here's the other kicker. Not every color has the same range of value. Watch this. If I did it with yellow, or like, I'll go yellow. Yellow's a lower value change one. I'll just quickly do this. Two more, this and that. If I change that to grayscale, you'd think it'd be the same, but it is not. The yellows are, look at that.
My God.
Yeah, it's like, it's funny. Some people are like, duh, and other people are like, brain explodes. There seems to be no middle ground. So some people commented on that video like, yeah, like, duh, you just explained what is basic knowledge. But when I found that out, my brain exploded. I'm like, wow, why does that happen? And I actually don't know. I actually don't have the answer. It's something to do with the way our eyes are just biologically made, I think. And the way colors exist like, on the visible spectrum. It's something to do with that, I'm sure. But
yeah, there's like the frequencies of light that represent those colors, you know, all of these things. You start getting into the science side real quick, which I do think is one of your specialties.
No, it is not.
I wanted to make sure. So you mentioned a video of yours. Which video would you say is where you hit this the most?
Let me YouTube myself real quick. I can never remember the titles of my videos because, like, I don't watch my videos after I make them. So, energy, color.
Yeah, that's your guys' job. After Marco makes a video, you guys have to watch them.
Yeah, I do not watch them. Okay, yeah, this one. Can I show you? I can just bring my monitor up, right? This one.
Sure.
Something strange you should know about color, and the thumbnail looks like that, where it says lighter equals darker.
Perfect.
If you
I'm
check
dropping that in the
if
chat.
You check that video out, yeah, it talks about it more. Unfortunately, in that video, again, this is something that only happens after you make a video sometimes. I didn't explain like technologically why that works, because like people point out like, oh, you're in like, if you went to HSV mode instead of RGB mode, you can like do this and that. I don't even talk about any of that, so people like took objection to that. But the video is not really about that. It's just about the plain fact that color values change with saturation, as the questioner was saying. And the video talks about navigating that. If you watch it with that as pretext, it'll help. I think it'll be helpful. Don't go out looking for an explanation. I'm just saying, hey, this happens. Let's use it. Let's work with it.
Yeah. Let's talk about how we can put it to work. Yeah. Which is art.
Exactly. In more recent years, I have gotten into more scientific things. Like I do have a slightly more technical video on like why the sky is blue, like Rayleigh scattering and all that stuff. And I have become more interested in like scientific parts of things, but sometimes it's just like, hey, like this is how reality is. Let's engage in that.
Yeah. Sometimes it's, I don't know, red in the shadows.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I try and at least always provide visual reasons for things. Sometimes they're not scientific reasons, but visual reasons. That is where I can never cheat. You know, that's my job as an educator.
If you guys do like anything that Marco is saying here today so far, I want to remind you guys that Marco's course can be found on proko.com/Marco Bucci. He has several courses on there. The one that I would say is probably the most like what we're talking about today would be your digital color survival guide.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Just colors, the color survival guide. Yeah.
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 It's a good one. We have a free video from it, I believe, on Proko already. One that was talking about some different concepts from there, along with all of the other videos that we've done with you that are on the channel. Again, those things are 20% off right now, but you can also get brushes on sale. You can get photo reference packs. Try to look for those bluish hairs in the beard if you really want to. That we were talking about earlier. It's up to you guys if you feel that you want something that is more in depth that you guys can replay as you need it here and there, and that will give you some kind of like a structured learning process rather than being able to ask some questions in a chat. Those things are, like I said, 20% off right now for the whole rest of the month. Anyway, Marco, take us back into it.
All right, cool. I think that's a good distinction between like why you get a premium class versus this. Like as a teacher, I put the same amount of love and care into my free stuff as I do my premium stuff. It's just the premium stuff has like, I feel like I have a longer time to explain things because if people are interested and they purchase it, they're there to learn. Whereas with like YouTube, I'm there at least partially to also entertain. So that kind of sometimes acts in opposition to like, I would love every YouTube video to be 3 hours, but like, let's face it, no one's going to watch that. You guys might, people here might, but that's not a recipe for a successful YouTube channel, right? So that is the cool part about the premium stuff is I get to spend a bit longer on these concepts. Okay, as I block this in, I want to make sure that I am this time using a much more subtle palette. Let's determine what that is. Remember, it still has to do with managing the difference between cool and warm. But in this case, I want to go from, instead of going from here to here, I basically want that background to go, sunlight notwithstanding, I want that background mainly to go from like here to about here. So I'm going to be working in this small range. I'm not allowed to go in here. Now, where there are sunbeams, as you can see in the original, yes, those sunbeams will then go over somewhere over there. But most of that background is not in sunlight. It's in like an ambient atmospheric sort of thing. It's this smaller range, but this still represents a path or partial path from warm to cool. So you're just as good using a path like this. This will result, as you can see, both in my painting and in the reference, it'll result in a more subtle statement of color, but that can be just as pleasing as a bold statement. The thing that makes harmony, again, is that you show the viewer a path and you as the artist like are consistently sticking to it. You're not like going crazy and going everywhere. So that is the driving force here, and indeed the driving force behind all my work. You learn it from. I learned it from nature. I didn't read a color theory book. I have seen tons of books on color, but I credit nature with teaching me this, and then I try and teach it. And when I see other artists use it, I see what are they doing that's similar to this, you know? So it comes from many different places, I guess.
Speaking of the rest of your art and the things that you do in it, Baked Soda has been waiting so patiently for one particular concept. They asked a couple different times, but I wanted to have it happen a little bit later. They said, "Hi, Marco. I've always wanted to know more about this light bully principle that you've mentioned before."
Yes.
What? They didn't ask anything further than this. That's the whole question.
Okay. Okay.
What is bullying in your art?
Yeah, it's. I know it's not the best term. Okay, that gets into. I don't want to get into a whole like separate lecture, which I do in the class. But basically, the idea there, and you know what? I think I have a photo here that I had I was originally gonna. Yeah, here we go. This is a stock photo. The watermark's still on there. Bio stock. I thought I would actually start with this. So this question relates to that. The idea, and this is a perfect example of the bully. The color of the light source will bully the colors to be like it. In this case, we have a very yellow. You can see this. You can literally see where the sun is, low on the horizon. We probably all intuitively know that as the sun goes down to the horizon, i.e. sunset, it gets warmer. It gets yellower, oranger, redder. We have a very like deeply orangey yellow sun here. This is not sunset, but it's getting there, right? Mm-hmm. Look at all the colors of the light. I'll just sample them. The colors of the grass in light are very bullied to be the same. The sun is bullying them to be like it. Conversely, the shadows, which are free of the direct light source, they have much more leeway to roam. That, in a nutshell, is the concept of the bully light. it gets its own lecture in the Color Survival Guide, which I would be happy to do it here, but I feel like it would get me too off topic, so I'm going to refrain. But that is it in the nutshell.
Yeah, it's just you guys should go check it out.
Yeah,
it's a thing that deserves its time.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like how, going back to the aerial painting, it's kind of like how her skin tones, like I'm imagining, I'm very much contriving, by the way. This is a full contrivance. This like warm spotlight. I'm imagining this takes place on a stage, and someone is up there with a big old spotlight shining warm light down on these characters. So their colors are bullied. Like, look, the flounder light and the aerial light, it's the same. One's a fish, one's human, but it's the same color because the light is way more dictating the color than the material is. So that is it is a key principle. Yet another key principle of how I use color is this idea of the bully. Just the best term I could think of for it, even though it's not the most pleasurable image to think about, but it's it kind of is what's happening on a color level.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, quick point here. As I paint the floor here, which I'm doing, you notice I'm in my grayish neutral purples or whatever, magentas, whatever color that is. Again, I'm not good with color names, whatever color that is. And then as we progress up the painting, it gets bluer and more saturated, thus representing my the path I pointed out 5 minutes ago, my warm to cool transition. So anything that is like more earthy in color, like the ground or these maybe marble columns, I'll get grayer with them, and I'll get away from blue, going this way with them. That will be enough to make them warm. Where the sun hits, like, see how the sun kind of rakes over the ground and onto this table here? That is where I'm allowed to make a bit more of a leap into slightly warmer hues and more saturation, because the sun, again, is going to bully those colors to be there. But the sun plays a very minuscule role, at least at least like in the, sorry, how am I saying this? It plays a big role, but it's only present in a few areas. So physically, it plays a small role. Compositionally, it plays a big role, but there's only a couple places of sun. That's what I'm trying to say. All right. Yeah, so I stumbled through that one.
That's the hard part.
Yeah. See, live streams are tough. I'm much better when I edit myself. What else you got there?
There was one question in the chat. I don't know if you want to take this one, Marco. Let's see. So Edwin Acevedo said, guys, I turned 26 today. Can I get a birthday shout out?
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Edwin. I do like it. So normally I would not entertain this thing. And Shinobi in the chat was like, that's got nothing to do with color mixing, but happy birthday regardless. Yes, I agree with this energy. Yeah, little grump.
A begrudging happy birthday.
Now, I hope it's a good birthday for you. Anyone else who had a birthday this year or next year. Everyone should have a happy birthday.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, I like it. I don't have to answer anything. I like it. All right, cool.
For an actual art question,
right.
This that's so much name with no inner caps. I'm not going to hit that one for the name. Okay. Sorry, guys. How would you do the colors if they forced you to use colors not found on Arial and Flounder? Like, how would you ignore the local color of something, or on preference or mood or whatever?
Good question.
No.
The first thing I would do, my first line of defense, use grays. So like, let's say I wanted to introduce some like greens into this rock surface thing. Two things. I would like pick a green that's very neutral, and I would use, I'll get the value right, and I would use soft edges. So if I do that, you can see that it works just fine. The neutrals help keep it harmonized, and the soft edges, which I haven't talked at all about edges, but my next YouTube video is all about edges. It'll come out next week. Our edges are soft. So if you want to control foreign colors that in your painting, start neutral and soft edged. That's my advice there.
I like this. If people wanted to find out,
sorry, Stephen, one more thing. Like, let's say Ariel had to wear a green headband. Well, that's a different conversation. Then it's like, okay, she's got a green headband on, and it's got a big saturated headband. In that case, you harmonize it by making sure that reacts to light in the same like sort of bully way that I've been talking about, where the green in light gets yellower and the green in shadow gets cooler. So and then I would try and work in some desaturated reds to even further harmonize it. But yeah, when you have like foreign colors, as I call them, you got grays are your first line of defense.
Agreed. So one person in the chat is kind of grumpy. They said that important questions aren't being answered, but surely a happy birthday. Artsy, you kind of like touched on a little of a couple questions that you feel haven't been answered. Expand on those. We'll ask. One of them was them asking, what is your automatic brush, your auto brush, your default brush?
Oh, like default
brush 20. Where did you get it?
Oh, where's brush? This one? Oh, that's just that's my drawing brush. It's just a calligraphy brush. It's shared with if you have any of my courses, you'll have this brush. It's just a sort of a Photoshop calligraphy brush that I have slightly modified to my own taste. It reacts to direction, and it's got a sharp enough edge that I feel like I can draw well with it. That's all it is. It's not a great brush. Like, as you can see it as I draw, like it's got these weird like artifacts that it makes. Like, it's not a great brush, but I just got used to it somehow, and I like it. That's what that brush is. But in terms of to get to the rest of the question, as you can see, I'm using an old school app called Brushbox here. Usually digital painting apps like have this like natively now. Brushbox came out when Photoshop didn't have this. I still use it, showing my age here. But I have my favorites, but I don't like use them all. And this is actually my upcoming video on edges talks about this. These brushes give me different edges. That is, the edge that this brush makes is a very different edge than, yeah, you can see the difference in edge, very different edge than that. Brushes give me different edges, and edges give me a variety of soft to hard, and the way I can create those. Edges have not even been mentioned in this live stream because they are an art fundamental, but they are like just a different category. So again, these live streams can only do so much. But to answer your question, brushes give me varieties of edge. So I have enough brushes in my like favorites box here that feel like I can satisfy many different ways of creating many different edges. And that is how I arrive at my brushwork.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel that the brush makes the artist?
No, definitely not. The brush work does, well, to some degree, but not the brushes. It's how you manipulate edges, really, and what you leave behind on the canvas versus what you disguise, what you render versus what you don't. That's what quote unquote makes the artist. The brushes you use, like if you made me use a different brush set, which you Proko people did when I was there recording, you gave me, I was like, what are these brushes? But I had to use them, and like the painting still looked like one of my paintings.
Yeah, looked like Marco work.
It looked like my painting, because I was able to still make edges with them. So it's not the brush, it's the edge, really, and just how comfortable you are drawing with it, how good the shape control is, or sometimes like how if you want a super scatter brush, like this one here, like I like this. It's almost like a controlled scatter, which I like. In fact, I painted a lot of the carpet with some of that is there anyway. You can see, actually, no, you see where I use it in here. See those little filigree patterns? A lot of that is from like this brush. Look at that. But not directly. Like I painted, then I refine it, right? It's not like just coming out from that one brush. It's refined, but okay. Yeah. I'm going to put in the carpet here. So watch this. I'm going to, because I think time-wise, let's about another 20-30 minutes, Stephen? And we wrap it up. All right, cool. Hit me with another question.
So let's see. There are a couple of different ones in here. Okay. One person did actually denote that theirs was a very important art question. Thank you, PieBite. I bought Marco's drawing for experienced beginners course on Proko, and I was wondering if he got around to cleaning his keyboard.
Nope. This keyboard needs replacement. It is a filthy keyboard. That is true. It's funny. I try to keep right now it's not because I'm building a pinball machine, but usually I keep my space pretty clean. But my keyboard, like I just don't have it in me to get inside all those little crevices. I'll just get a new keyboard. But
Yeah.
thank you for the reminder. I definitely do need a new keyboard.
We're just gonna send you one of those little keyboard vacuums.
Yeah, I would love that. I swear my keyboard is not a reflection of like how I live the rest of my life. I promise.
It's true. I've seen you in person. You were a very tidy man.
Yeah. I shaved and I took a shower before this chat.
I'll vouch for this.
Yeah.
And you, the last time that we were together in person, you had the most possible like messy situation. You were literally walking around with a tube of ice cream. Like you were ready to be messy and you were clean.
Oh man. We made the best discovery. We were out for dinner and we found this chain called Tacos 1986. And it was just on the outside, it looks like this just dive, but I loved it. I went back to Tacos 1986 like 3 times at Lightbox.
What?
I did.
I did not know
like,
this. I know that you went one more.
Oh, yeah. No. I went 2 more times.
Wow.
Yeah. That's how much I loved it. And like, It's not a great place. I can't say it's a great spot, but I loved it. Anyway,
No,
that's way off.
I respect this. Yeah, no, I respect this though. There's one question here that I don't know if you're gonna have like a super deep answer on this one, but they asked again, so it seems like they really want to know. Amunur in the chat asked, "How do you judge value when mixing colors in traditional media like gouache, where colors dry differently as different values from when they were mixed?"
That is a very good question. There is a lot of frustration. I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. There's a lot of frustration in that process. Absolutely. A part of my answer is just getting used to how gouache in particular dries. If you're frustrated by gouache, try acrylic, because acrylic does not have that property. It generally will dry the way you put it down. That's not entirely true for the darkest darks, but in general, it'll dry the way you put it down. I love acrylic for that reason. Gouache is indeed way more frustrating. But it's just getting to know it. That's the best I can say. And also though, but here's the good news in all that. In getting to know it, you are inherently learning about color because you are understanding the little shifts that happen when it dries. Like, oh, it dries a bit lighter and cooler, or darker and warmer. Usually gouache dries lighter though, not darker. And you will be engaging in a color conversation that in digital you're not. So I've actually feel like those little incidentals of traditional media really help you digitally. Like it helps you understand color, which then helps you digitally.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. That's what I'm trying to say.
Vanessa N asked, "What makes the figure stand out in this painting? Is it the value, saturation, atmospheric perspective? A lot is purple, so I'm not sure why she still stands out so much."
It's a good question. It's it does boil down to basic contrast. If you look at, there are just a few strategic areas of very high contrast, light and dark contrast, not color. Specifically, her hair versus the background. It's very dark versus fairly light. I mean, that is a huge jump. You're not going to find that particular jump anywhere else in the painting. So I've drawn you in that way. And also I've found some strategic hard edges where the light meets her dress. And, the little light creeping up over her shoe there, that was very strategically placed. Like, that doesn't happen by accident. That's me, like, trying to find ways of getting the figure to pop in little spots. And also, like, you see this sort of fully art directed, invented, contrived bit of almost a rim light coming in from like a totally unnatural source that pops her out. And it's also a hard edge. See how hard that edge is? That helps also pop her out. So and it's up there too. Those are, and you can see it on her dress there as well. So it's very strategically placed value contrasts that pop her out. She is definitely not as poppy though as Ariel is, because Ariel employs more contrast, but she has enough contrast. Clara here is her name. Clara has enough contrast that she still does come forward.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about, if something popped, it's going to be value 99% of the time.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like value's the first thing. And then so much of it after that is just the combination of those things. Like you said, like softness, like hardness of edges, all these different things that you don't necessarily fully perceive.
In the interest of time here, because I know we're kind of dwindling, I'm going to block her in. I've been going a bit slower on this one. Sorry, guys. This one is the harder painting, so maybe I should have started here. But I think actually starting on Ariel was better because I was able to go through concepts a bit faster. Here are these little micro movements. Her dress, I can oscillate between violets and blues. There is no pop yet. Back to the question. There's no, on my painting right now, the one I'm doing, there's no pop to the figure yet, but watch, I will remedy that. So I'm glad that question was asked, because I can start focusing on that. The first line of defense is high value contrast, and then coupled with hard edges helps too. So I'm gonna start putting in some of that help her pop, including like her hair. Again, this relates back to what I said at the beginning. For any new people just joining the stream, this was the finished painting, but this is the color study that I did live here. You do not have to like draw well to study color. Your drawing can be rudimentary, like this is. It can be fast, and you can get directly to the color questions, which is nice. You don't have to like have a beautiful drawing to answer color questions. You just have just enough on there to engage with the color stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right, cool.
So Artsy came back with their like the important questions that we had ignored.
Okay, please.
So
yeah.
they said, what's the most important fundamental skill for a beginner artist to focus on when starting out? Is there one important fundamental skill, Marco?
Oh, okay. I'm going to say the word drawing is the answer, but that's not one fundamental. Drawing has many fundamentals. Gesture drawing. And that's my honest answer, because gesture captures life, weight, pose. You can capture so much in a gesture, and it helps you understand your own like visual language, the way you move your hand, the way you are able to quickly observe and answer something. It's all contained in gesture. I spent the first several months, if not a whole year, of my art journey gesture drawing. So for me, gesture is my answer to that. That's the one fundamental that will help you the most. And I feel like if you look at my paintings, like you can see like they're gestural, right? You can see like you can almost track my brushwork. Gesture has really informed my illustration style as well. So gesture drawing.
Yeah. All right. I'll take that one. I agree. Yeah, I think that it's something that will apply to many other things. That's the key component of when you start learning. Don't try to focus down all the way onto like just like shape design or something like that. Each concept kind of informs the others, but gesture, there's many things encapsulated within that one. I very much agree.
I don't think there's ever a time where you're not where what you're doing is not informed by your experience gesture drawing. Not that you're always gesture drawing, but what you do, what you learn in gesture is so foundational to how you move and how you answer questions visually that it permeates everything. Mm-hmm. Hence motivating my answer.
Yeah, absolutely. Piebite again in the chat, just doing my freaking job for me on this one. They brought up that this is a great spot for me to talk about the idea of the Proko gesture challenge that's happening right now.
Oh yeah, good.
Yeah. I was actually gone on vacation on this one, so I totally forgot this was happening.
Okay.
Yeah, if you guys go to proko.com/challenge, that I will put here in the chat, there is a whole thing that's going on right now, led by Stephen Michael Hampton. That's all about gesture. He's got a new course that's going to be coming out, and he wants to see who are the people out there who would most benefit from his course or deserve just a little bit of refining for free because of how good they've already been doing gesture. So if you guys go over to that link, you guys can find out more about it. There's also a video here on the channel. We have a lot going on here on the channel right now between the Black Friday sale. The other challenge is happening as well right now. It's a lot, but you guys can stay updated by just following the actual channel itself or any of the things on socials. So,
cool.
Marco, what do you think are the last things that you want to be sure to make sure people know about in this painting that you're working on right now? What are the biggest concepts?
Yeah, so you can see I'm pulling the character into focus, into a focal point, I should say, with some bigger value contrasts and some harder edges. Color-wise, I've kept the same sort of scheme where the color goes from a medium saturated blue to a lesser saturated purple. So like I'm navigating a much more narrow range, but it still follows the overall stuff I talked about at the beginning of this live stream. And then there is a bit of that bully principle where the sunlight comes through. It is bound by the same sort of color. Now I can expand on this a little bit. The carpet is red and the floor is kind of neutral. So a red carpet is not going to have the same color in light as a neutral floor, because you have to respect that it is a red carpet, a very red carpet. So what the sun is going to do. Let's say the carpet's base color is like this. The sun is warm, like a yellowy sun-ish. So I'm going to move it toward yellow and raise the value. And like this can, maybe the grayer, this can be my red in light. The carpet is actually more magenta in my original. I've made it more red in this one, but the same principle applies. Yeah. So the bully stuff is something that is specific to understanding how strong light sources work. Other than that, like honestly, it's just a matter of let's see if I can wrap some stuff up in a few minutes.
There was, so if you want to answer this particular question as you wrap some things up, John Doe said, for someone who has watched all of the videos on Marco's channel and Marco's Proko videos, what would he say is the biggest selling point for the Color Survival Guide course? Currently on sale, 20% off on Proko.com. Marco Bucci.
Nice. The biggest selling point is you will learn. It's like this live stream on steroids. You'll learn like expanded concepts that we've talked about here, more wrinkles within that, like more ways to control color. You'll learn how to study well. You will learn different ways of different palettes you can use in your painting, tried and true palettes, but also gain the knowledge to invent your own palettes based on these principles, which is I think what a good artist should be able to do, is kind of navigate their own color space and not feel the need to, use some like predetermined palette. Yeah, it'll just give you that artistic confidence that we're all searching for. It'll help give it to you. Nothing is going to give it to you. It'll help. It'll help you get there. Yeah, it'll help you get there.
Yeah. So for anyone just like to actually go into the real meat and potatoes of things, the outline of this that's mentioned for the chapters of that course. Chapter 1 is complementary palette. Chapter 2, color temperature, warm versus cool. Chapter 3, color temperature, moving across the spectrum. Chapter 4, color vibrations, that stuff you guys all want to hear about so much. Chapter 5, palettes, mood, and light. And Chapter 6, how to study. There's a lot that's in there that, from just hearing those broad overview topics, you get the idea of what's going to be in those things, but you don't really know until you're digging into it just how complex each of those things are and how much they're concepts that inform each other. Something that you don't necessarily fully internalize until you're really getting into it and trying to intentionally learn it. It's something that you're otherwise kind of like learning and applying just kind of by accident while studying nature. But I think you did a very good job of codifying those things and making them actual concepts that you can apply in different situations, drop some, keep some when you want, and mix and match as you need.
Exactly. It's all about navigating the visual space, right? So like I do this with all my lessons, not just the color one. I try and give students tools to understand what it is they're engaged in. And like, it's not like answers, it's guides. The class is a guide. An answer would be like, hey, always use this color for the sun. But like, that doesn't exist. It's, hey, you're painting sunlight. Cool. Here's how sun works. Here how sunlight affects color. You can have all these different options, and here's how I'm going to use it. And then from there, you can use it exactly like I did, or you can say, hey, knowing this information, I'm going to go a little bit this way, a little bit that way. And like, it was so cool at Lightbox just a few weeks ago. I met a lot of, it was really cool. I met several students that I had many years ago, like students I had like 7, 8, 9 years ago. And they were exhibiting at Lightbox, or a lot of them were, and their work just blew me away. I'm like, because when I had them as students, they were just starting out, and like, therefore, I was critiquing them, and they were making the same sort of like, let's call them mistakes that all of us, including me, make. And now like their work was so awesome. And it was really cool to see that. It was proof to me that teaching works. I mean, as trite as that sounds, because sometimes I'm sitting here teaching, I'm alone in a room, and I'm like, are my lessons like actually helping people? Because I know they help me, but like I learned it this way, but are they actually physically, or not physically, are they actually benefiting another artist out there? And I got proof at Lightbox that they are. And it was such it sounds like I'm self-aggrandizing here, but it was a cool affirmation for me that this stuff is worth it for me to do. And it does help, and these concepts do work.
The one thing I do want to make sure that people know is, though your work to somebody might seem like it is often a stylized approach, do you think that the people that you saw that had been your students 7 to 8 years ago, did their work look like your work?
No, not at all. No. In fact, one guy his name is Casper Prick. He does, or has, a lot of his portfolio is he did the designs for that kit bashing stuff. Remember that, those 3D kit bashes that you can buy? He like did the 2D designs that then the kit bashing folks modeled. And the work looks nothing like mine, but we met at Lightbox, and I have his book in here somewhere. And he was like showing me all the stuff. And I'm like, I was almost blown away. I'm like, you learned this from me? Like, how? It looks so different. But it was, there he is, like telling me like my classes really helped him. It was so cool. So I don't teach style. I have some YouTube videos on style, but as a serious instructor, I know that I cannot teach style. I firmly believe everyone's style, your style is already in you. It's how you think, how you move, how you react. That's your style. I have always painted this way, but I did not always have the fundamentals to paint this way. I remember being critiqued. I used to take piano lessons. This is a relevant example. I used to take piano lessons, and when I was a kid, and I remember my teacher gave me a tune, like a song to learn, and I started like improvising on it, and like I did my own thing. And she's like, I remember she sat me down. She's like, "It's nice that you're doing that, but you haven't earned that yet. You're not allowed to do that yet. You have to learn why this piece works, and then you can. I'm not going to stop you from doing it, whatever it is you're going to do. But what you're doing now is you are bypassing the fundamental part, and therefore you're kind of cutting yourself off at the knees when it comes to improvising, because you don't know what rules. Well, there are no rules, but you don't know where you're deviating and where you're not. So you're aimless. My favorite artists out there anyway are people like Craig Mullins pops to mind, someone who makes very distinct stylistic choices, but is clearly rooted in how life works. And then from there, that's the jumping off point. And how life works is all about the fundamentals.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, you want to be able to do things with intention. You can arrive at some super awesome, gorgeous, stylized work, something that you just stumble your way into. But you want to be able to do that stuff with intention, and not just because that's what your hand naturally leans to sometimes. Yeah. You can give into that idea of what your hand naturally leans into, but you want to be able to make exactly what you envision at any given time. And that's not just about you following what feels natural,
Exactly. Here's an example. Like this desk is red. Like it's a like oak and stained oak desk. So it's like this red sort of cherry sort of color, dark cherry. But I don't want it just to feel like a flat red. I'll start with that, but I'll desaturate it a bit and go in and add these little, like I call them micro vibrations, where I'm able to just oscillate that color temperature a little bit, and it just gives it a life. And the way I know that is because nature does that. There's no local color in nature. Things always have these little vibrations. Like go look at a tree. It's not the tree trunk is not brown. It's all kinds of little varieties of neutrals going into slightly more saturated stuff. That is what is informing the painting of this desk right now, And these are all fundamentals that are devoid of style. It's things you learn that you can apply in myriad ways. There's no end to it.
Yeah. I want to hit 3 things before we wrap up here, Marco.
And then we'll wrap. Cool.
Okay. All right. So first and foremost, you have a book, Marco.
Yes, I do.
You have a new book.
I have it's right here. Look at this. We didn't have it. I happen to have it. Yeah. I'm reading my own book. Yeah. This is remember when someone asked 10 minutes ago, what's the one fundamental you should learn? And my first thing was drawing. This is a book of drawing foundations. This is like the stuff. It's 175 pages. This is the stuff I learned early on and stuff I refined many years later that is the backbone of my painting. And there is a chapter on color in here too, by the way. At the end, there's one little bonus chapter on color. But it is the drawing guide that I always wanted that I wish I had when I was starting. That's the driving force behind that book. So like, yes, you're going to have your lessons. Like there's going to be gesture, there's going to be form, but there's also little things like subtle ways to capture character, what a good shape is versus a bad shape, how useful these things are, when you should use them, like things that I think regular drawing books don't really get into. This drawing book has that. So yeah, it's called It's called Debt-Free Art Degree Foundations in Drawing. And you can find it at major retailers. Like if you're in the States, Barnes and Noble will have it. And if you're in Canada, I think Indigo will have it. Amazon has it though, which is worldwide. Mm-hmm. So you can get it anywhere.
If people wanted to direct link to that anywhere across the internets, you can find that on Marco Bucci socials. I'm assuming on marcobucci.com.
Yeah, go to marcobucci.com. It's the front page on marcobucci.com. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, you guys should go check it out. Marco put hard work into that one. And I've never seen Marco Bucci do a thing poorly. Just saying. And if you guys buy the book,
compliment, thank you.
If you guys buy the book or the courses or anything that Marco has put together for you guys, I think that you guys will find the exact same thing. It's just not a thing that Marco's got in him.
Thanks, Stephen. That was honestly really nice of you. Thank you. My dad said when I was young, I remember I did a bad job, like shoveling snow, I think it was. And he's like, if you're going to do something, it's worth doing it right, or just don't do it. You know, my dad admonished me with that one day, probably 25, 30 years ago. And it's never left my mind.
Yeah, no, I agree very much with your dad on this one. I think, don't get me wrong, experiment, be bad at the thing in private, but then ascend to greatness.
Yeah, but experimenting by nature is like learning how to do something right? It's not it's not like a result driven thing. We're getting into a whole philosophical can of worms there.
We'll have you on Draftsman for that one. The last thing that I wanted to bring up here is that Artsy had one very important other question.
Okay, let's do it.
I think you'll have strong feelings about this one, Marco.
Okay.
Painting Light 101 by Jeremy Vickery on Proko, or Marco's Color Survival Guide? Which one is better?
I can't. I refrain. I reject the question. I cannot. Hey, Jeremy Vickery is awesome.
Yeah, you guys are very close.
We've been in touch for years. He doesn't work at Pixar anymore, but in his Pixar days, we talked. We talked about possibly working together. We talked about just light and color. We share a mutual love for this stuff. He is an awesome teacher, and I would never say to buy my stuff over his. I would like to say you can't go wrong with either of us. We are both very passionate about fundamentals and communicating that to you. So whatever you choose, I think is a good choice.
I agree absolutely here. I think the only thing that this could possibly come down to is just the idea of whose energy you guys vibe with more. Yeah, they're both fantastic. You guys are both sweethearts of humans. If you guys want to check out either of their teaching styles, we've got free videos from both Jeremy and Marco here on the channel. You guys can check those out for free and see who you vibe with a little bit more. Yeah. I think the real answer that's going to happen is that you guys want both. But it's okay because there's 20% off on everything on Proko.com right now during our Black Friday sale for the rest of the month. There's links in the description, in the chat, everywhere else for you guys who are interested. Marco, do you want to say anything to people here at the end of the stream?
I do. I just want to say, I don't like advertising stuff that I'm selling. It's not something I enjoy doing, but this is what I do for a living. And honestly, and like many instructors, I do my absolute best at putting out quality free lessons every month on my YouTube channel. If you don't have the cash to buy stuff, I got stuff for free always coming on my YouTube channel. If people have interest and the funds to get the premium stuff, that helps fuel my free stuff. So it's it all wraps into one. It's funny, when you sell stuff, people inherit some people, very minority few, but bristle at that, oh, you're selling stuff. But it's that also fuels my free stuff. So it all is bundled into one. And for those who don't want to buy something from me, I hope you equally enjoy the free stuff I have on YouTube, which I'm always working on. So thank you for checking out this live stream. And if you do choose to go get some stuff at Proko.com, I equally hope you enjoy that. It's always my goal to help you with your art journey.
Yeah, absolutely. If you guys don't want to buy something from us for any reason, let's say you have one of those cool memberships over with a Creature Art Teacher, Marco has things over there that you can find as well. Marco is a man of the people. He will teach you wherever you want. So go look for him on his socials and find out more about where you can find him. Marco, thank you so much for being here. I look forward to getting to hang out with you again. Sorry for the technical hurdles in the beginning that we had to deal with, but I'm glad we made it through.
Yeah, I hope my end of the connection was good. You were coming through great. But thank you everyone for joining. This has been fun. I wish I could have like painted more, but hey, we did 2 kind of rough paintings in a couple hours. That's not bad. So I hope this has been helpful to you.
Yeah. I will see every one of you again pretty soon here. We've got so many streams happening next week. There's another coming up pretty much all of the days that you guys could possibly look at. We'll update you guys with more on socials, and we'll see you guys all later. Have a good one, guys.
Yeah. Take care, everyone.